Do you have certain jewelry findings in your stash that you have way too many of but don't know what to do with? In this video, I'll show unexpected ways to use bead tips, cord ends, crimp ends to make super dangly pendants and earrings. The possible variations are endless. Hey there, creative people, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. So I'm not quite sure how it happened, but I was looking in my jewelry findings and realized I have all of these cord ends, and I really don't know why, because it's not something I use very often or very much, or maybe that's why I have a lot, because I don't use them much. But I was trying to think of alternate ways of using them and came up with a really fun idea for making something super dangly for pendants or for earrings. What I did was I made a couple things with these smaller ones. Here's a pendant version that I made using these. These are just fold over cord ends. And I folded them over bits of bead stringing wire. And on the ends of that bead stringing wire I put beads and flattened crimps, and so we have all of this wonderful movement and dangliness. These were just attached to jump rings, which were attached to a bail, which is on a piece of leather cord, but of course I'm sure you can think of all kinds of ways to customize it. Now you could use these bigger ones for other things, bigger, thicker cords like silk cord, rat tail, wax linen twine. Any kind of a thicker cord would be good for any of these. And again, make a similar kind of dangly thing. It would just have a larger scale because, of course, the cord and the findings would be bigger and you'd have to use bigger beads. But just kind of the same idea, way of making something with lots of fun and movement using these kinds of findings. So these are really sweet little findings. They're, I think, a bit more attractive than these fold-over ones, but they're also a little bit more expensive. These are crimp ends with a loop, and the idea is that you put a piece of wire in there like that. In fact, I've done a Friday Findings video on this. Put a piece of wire in there, and then you use your chain nose pliers to flatten it around that wire. And I've actually finished necklaces this way, where they were strung onto bead stringing wire. But these are about 50 cents each at Art Beads, and to buy 20 to make a pair of earrings would have been $10, and I decided I just didn't feel like spending that this month. So then I kept looking at my findings to see what did I have an abundance of, and I came across these. These are bead tips. And what's awesome about these is that you can take a piece of bead stringing wire, and if you see what I did here, all I did was I tied a knot in it. I tied a knot, slid the two ends through the hole, from the inside of course, and then squeeze it shut. So I think this is a little bit more attractive of a finish, although honestly on this you don't notice these so much. But I think this just is nicer looking, and it's actually, I think, a bit less work to do it this way. Let me show you how I'm going to use these little bead tips to make a pair of earrings. And of course you could use this technique with any finding that does basically the same thing, holds onto something that you can dangle something from. Now I noticed when I did the knotting thing and put it in the bead tip that the wires splayed out like this, and I wasn't sure if I was happy with that. It depends on the look you want. Maybe if you want a really wild fringy look. So I tried flattening crimp just with a pair of pliers, and one, it's a little big for the bead tip, and two, they still splayed out. So then I did the same thing, only used my one-step crimper, and that kept those in there nice and tidy and straight. So it just depends on the look you want. The fold-over cord ends will keep them pretty straight too, and not splayed out quite so much. For this technique, you need to have bead stringing wire that looks nice. You want a color that is pretty. It's not going to be hidden. It's definitely part of the design. So I have here some 49 strand in, what's the color? All right, where's the color? It's got to be on here. Metallic satin gold, there it is. And it's a nice color, it'll look pretty. I decided to go with warm shades for my beads. I started out with these Swarovski crystal bicones, and I believe these were from the dollar bead box, because it's not really a color I would have picked for myself, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of the orangey pinks, although I'm starting to warm up to them a little. Haha, see what I did there? Warm up to them. So I started pulling out other colors I thought would look good with them. These are 6mm Swarovski bicones. I also have some in fuchsia. I think I've got 4 and 6mm in there. That looks pretty. I've got some rose, I believe this is called. And then I just kept pulling out colors. I pulled out the, this is cyan. But it was a little bit more red. I was thinking more like sunset colors. And even this is a little bit too fire engine red. And even that had too much red. I could definitely have gone in that direction with the reds. I just decided I wanted to do pinks. And that's a yellow. I might use a little bit of the yellow, more of the fuchsia. Light pink. So I actually ended up pulling out a selection of colors to use with these. And what you didn't see was that I actually threw these all in the dish. And in fact, I had all of these colors in here, and started pulling out the ones I didn't like. It's kind of how I design. I grab everything I think will go, throw it all together, and then start taking out the ones that I didn't really care for. And by mixing them all together in a dish, you really get a look, like I said, kind of a sunset or a sunrise shades, just bright, sparkling, not quite so deep as the dark reds. So that's what I'm going to go with. So what I've got here is 48 beads. I think there's a few extras in here in case I drop some on the floor, which happens regularly. 48 beads, 24 per earring, and divided by 4 per, I don't know what you call it, finding, I guess. Little finding means 6 findings for each earring. So you'll need 12 of your little findings, whatever type you decide to use, and 12 pieces of bead stringing wire. For this one, and this is probably a little long for an earring, just depends on what you want, I cut mine between 2 and 4 inches long, and I cut a variety of sizes. I think for these earrings, although I like long dangly earrings, I'm going to cut them a little bit shorter, so probably lengths from maybe 2.5, maybe 1.5 to 2.5 inches. So I've gone ahead and cut a few lengths of wire, anywhere from just under 2 inches to closer to 3 inches. It's better to cut them a little bit longer than you think you're going to need. And I did some testing and experimenting and figured out the best way to do this is to first make your fold. It can be difficult to fold this wire and get this fold into a crimp because it's so springy. So fold it and then poke the ends through your crimp. Now you can slide that up close to the fold. And there are so many crimps to do in this project, I definitely recommend the one-step crimper. There we go. The next thing you'll want to do is slide it into your finding. So for the bead tips, you just go from the inside to the outside, fold it in half. Now you can slide on your beads. This is why I said to cut it a little bit longer. I cut these a little short, and it's actually easier to manage if it's a little long. So I've got a bead, so I'll put 2 on there. Okay, get my crimper. One thing I like about this is this little arm kind of holds it so I can grab it and then slide it down to where I want it to be. Maybe? Yes? Yes. There. That's so tiny and short, I think I may just add one bead to this other side. And you can see it would have been a lot easier if I left the wire longer. Then I'd be able to just have a little bit more to hold on to and maneuver. But this will work. So this piece of wire to begin with was about 2 inches, which leaves you an inch when folded, and less than that once you add in the crimps and the trimming. There we go. So that's the shortest unit I would make, and then just work from there, adding making as many as you want. So to use these little findings, if you want to use them to do the same kind of a thing, you just take your wire, fold it in half, and use a pair of pliers or something to kind of squash it into a sharper fold that will fit up inside the finding, and it just about holds 2 strands. I don't know that you could fit much more in there. So what I would do is push it up, and now you can see that loop of wire in there. Pull it down until you can't see it. And I'm not going to waste my finding by actually doing it, but you just go ahead and grab right there with your pliers, squeeze, turn it 180 degrees, squeeze, and then you have that fastened in there quite securely. To use these fold over findings, what I did was I centered my wire in there. Now often if you look at these, it kind of is hard to tell, but not always, but sometimes one of these little legs that's sticking out is shorter than the other. You want to do the shorter one first. So I'm going to put that wire inside that corner with the shorter one. Flat nose pliers are the perfect thing here. Go ahead and grab that and just flatten it down like that. Then I'm going to fold down the other side and kind of tuck it into that other corner. You can position it how you want. So you can position it kind of spread out. You can position it straight down. Go ahead and grab that with your flat nose. Sometimes it wants to escape. Sometimes you gotta kind of grab it and start that bend. Make sure your wire is where you want it to be before you grab it again and flatten. And there you are. And now that's ready to add your beads. So here are the 6 dangles I created for one earring. I did decide to alternate the placement of the bicones just so they kind of nestle in each other. So one has a 6mm on the bottom and a 4mm on the top, and then I reverse that. You do want to kind of take a minute and go through and just gently tug on all of your crimps. I had several that would slide right off. Because it's only crimped on one wire, sometimes it wants to slide off better. So give them a tug, make sure they're all secure. I have here some 4mm jump rings to hold it all together and an ear wire that I made some time ago. I'll link to that video. I showed how to make your own custom ear wires. The way I've found to assemble this, the easiest way that I've found, is to do it from the bottom. So grab a hold of one of your jump rings and open it up. And slide on your bottom ones. Now you're not limited to only having 2. I thought to add 3 on the bottom. I think that's what I did on this pendant. But yeah, experiment. Make it as full and as fluffy as you want. So we're just going to close up that jump ring. That'll be the bottom. I just kind of wanted a cascade more than a pom-pom, I guess. Look. Make sure your jump rings are closed securely, of course. Next, I'm going to open up another jump ring. So I added the longest ones at the bottom and the shortest ones at the top, again going for that cascade look. This is just one of the many elements of this design that you can change up to suit yourself and experiment with different ways of doing it. Alright, so now for the next one, I'm going to add one of my dangles and then the jump ring of the bottom dangles and my other dangle for my middle tier. And you can have more than 3 tiers. You can try adding them all to a single jump ring, but because these bead tips have a bit of thickness, they're going to get really crowded and you'll end up with more like a starburst, which you might like. Like I said, it's a great design to just experiment with and see the different kinds of looks you can get. You could get something that looks like, you know, an allium flower that's, well, kind of like a starburst or a firework. Now try to place that down carefully so that you keep track of that jump ring. No, thank you. And open the top one, the jump ring for the top. Like I said, feel free to change up the number of tiers, the number of dangles in each tier. I can see we're using those little crimp ends that I showed you before, the ones I thought were maybe a little expensive. Like, I don't know if I said, but yeah, they were like 50 cents each at Art Beads, and I wanted to use, I think I had calculated like 20, or even a dozen would be, the dozen that I'm using here would be $6 just in the findings. All right, so you're going to put one on and then the jump ring from the row below it and then one of your dangles. And since this is the top one, I will also add my ear wire. 4mm jump rings seem to work well. I'm going to grab my bent nose, I'm going to make it easier. For this scale, I think I used 6mm for that green pendant I showed you. So here it is again in a pendant form. And here are the earrings. And I just love the colors, I love the sparkle and just all the movement that's happening in there. And I hope you enjoy it too and that you'll give this idea a try.